How's it going, everyone, and welcome to this video where today I'm going to be teaching you how to actually get started inside of Blender without even having any knowledge of Blender at all. So we're going to be teaching you how to actually do 3D modeling and even creating your own VR chat worlds, okay? So we're going to be making a whole series, so let me know in the comment section below what specific thing you want us to cover in this series, okay? So this specific video, we're gonna cover the basics of Blender, okay? The controls, getting used to actually moving around in Blender, and just knowing the platform, okay? So this is gonna be the very bare minimums. The next video that we are gonna cover after this one is actually gonna get used to modeling, okay? So we're actually gonna start doing the modeling process in the next video, okay? So I'm gonna put timestamps below, so you're welcome at any point to skip ahead to any specific thing that you would love to know how to do. So let's go ahead and hop into the program and teach you the basics of Blender. And here we are, guys. We are inside of Blender as if you just opened the program for the very first time. Okay, so I know it can look very daunting, right? There's a lot of stuff on the screen. There's a lot of stuff happening, but don't worry, we're gonna teach you the basics. We're gonna teach you what all this means and just everything you need to know to get started inside of Blender, okay? So first and foremost, we're gonna teach you the controls, how to move the camera. We're gonna then teach you how to delete and add stuff into the scene. We're gonna then teach you, how to move stuff around, the orientations, why all this is important, because it's gonna help us out later on in future videos in this series, okay? So let's go ahead and touch the basics of moving the camera. So you can see that we have the canvas here, we have this little cube on the scene, we have all this stuff happening. This big main screen, that is your base canvas. This is the most important scene here as of right now for this video. So we're gonna go ahead and teach you how to move around. So if you take your mouse wheel and you use the scroll wheel and you scroll in and out, you can see that you're now zooming in and out of the scene. Really cool. Now, if you take the scroll mouse wheel and you press it in and move it around, you can actually pan around the scene. That's kind of cool, like in a 360-degree manner. Now, if you hold Shift and then press in the middle mouse button, you can now pan looking in one direction. So, you can kind of pan around the scene. This is just like some basic controls on how to move around in Blender. A lot of people get confused right from the get-go. How do I move? There are some prompts down here in the bottom. I know I'm kind of like in the way of some of them, but in the very bottom left, there are some hotkey tips that you can actually go on. But first and foremost, just get used to moving around in Blender. Get used to kind of panning the camera around, getting the feel of it, like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. Another cool thing is when you have something highlighted, for instance, this cube here, this little orange highlighted cube, if you hit the period key, boom, you focus in on the selected object here. So if you hit period, no matter where you are, if you get lost, you're like, oh my goodness, I don't know where my scene is. You can even come up here to the top right where you see we have a camera, a cube, and a light. Just select one of these guys and then hit the period key, and now you will find your selected object. So as I mentioned up here, this is the scene collections. This is basically saying everything that's inside of the scene, right? So we have a cube, we have a little light thing that you can see here, and we also have a camera, okay? So we really don't need the camera or the light, so we can actually delete those, but there's different ways. So you can left click up here to select them, and then you can hit X to delete, or you can just hit the delete key. Now, if you want to select stuff inside of the canvas here, your original thought is to left click, right? And it's like, oh, well, what's this little thing here that's moving around? You would think that that's how you collect. I mean, you can like click and hold, and you can like box select. That's one thing. But to actually select stuff in the scene here, you have to right click. I know it's a little different. So you have to right click on the scene, but you can actually left click over here in this little tab area over here. So, we can box select, we can right click, or we can just come up here and click light, and then we can just delete it. Okay, so that's an easy way to select and deselect stuff, right click. But this little thing that's moving around when we left click, this is called the cursor, So when you move your cursor on the screen and you left click it, this little target thing that we see here, that is called the cursor inside of Blender. Okay, we're gonna use this for later knowledge. Okay, just remember the little target looking thing is the cursor. Okay, so we have this little box in the scene here, pretty cool looking box. We're still gonna add some stuff to the scene. Okay, we want to maybe add some different shapes to the scene here. Okay, so let's left click over here. We have this little target thing. That's the cursor. We're going to add something in, and this is where it's going to spawn, okay? This is why it's important, okay? So let's go ahead and add a different shape into the scene, all right? So how to add is Shift A. So you hit Shift A, and it will give you a prompt window here that says add, and there's a lot of stuff. It's like, oh my goodness, what is all this stuff that's going on here? The most important thing is the very top one that says mesh. This basically means 3D object, okay? So inside of here, you have more different things. You have planes, another cube you can add. You can even add a cylinder. You can even add a monkey. Shoot, why not? Let's add the monkey. So here's our monkey here, and of course we can hit the period key to focus in on it, and we can move around again with the middle mouse button by pressing it in and holding shift, and we can pan around it. So we got our cool little monkey in the scene, right? Let's add something else, right? We can come over here, click over here, Shift A, go to mesh. Let's add in a cylinder now. So there we go. We got some 3 different objects. And of course, you can see up here, we have the, whatever this guy is. This is the monkey. This is how they name it on here. Then you got the cylinder and the cube. Okay, so these are all the cool things on adding and taking stuff away. And of course, we can right click and X. X is like my hotkey for, you know, quickly deleting stuff in the scene. But delete also works as well. So we've added stuff, we took stuff away. Let's kind of get used to moving around in the scene. Like say we have this cube here and, you know, kind of introducing a little bit of animation. Maybe you want to move stuff. Maybe you just want it to be like moved to a different part in the scene, okay? So there is free moving where you can just move it freely, but there also is axes moving. You can move it along the axes is what I call them. So you see this like little green line and this little red line. We're going to get into that here in a second. So the biggest thing is if we move this, one thing you can do is just right click and hold. You can move it around. You can also, if you move it, and say you don't wanna move this. Like, oh, I didn't mean to move that. My bad. You can hit Control Z. That will undo. You can also hit Shift Control Z, and that will redo. So it's basically, you can even come up here to the edit, and you can see up here they have the hotkeys for that. You can see the Control Z, the Shift Control Z, but it's just quicker to you know, Shift Control Z, Control Z. It becomes your best friend when you start doing a lot of stuff. Okay, so just keep in mind of that. Okay, so that is how you undo a thing. You're like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to move it. So let's say you want to move it another way. So G, the G key is also another way to move stuff. If you hit G, you can move it. Now, here's the cool thing is, like, what if you start moving this and you're like, oh wait, I didn't mean to move that. You know, you can right click and it will pop it back to where you first picked it up. So that's what I loved using the G key, because if it's like, oh, my bad, I just right click. It's really that easy instead of like clicking and you know, dragging it and then having to Control Z. So just a preference thing. Now let's move it along these lines here. Okay, so the reason why we call these the axes lines or whatever is if you look right up here, you see this little X, the Y, and the Z. These are your different axes, okay? So this is actually going to come very, very important, especially when we get to modeling, because we're going to actually be moving stuff on these axes, okay? So we're going to go ahead and discover and learn how to do that, okay? So let's say I move this guy and I want to keep him on the green line here, but you see how I'm free moving it? I'm like, oh, well, you know, and then, oh, I'm trying to go down the red line, and I look and I'm like, oh, wait, it's actually going up in space. I don't mean to do that. That's not what I want. So this is why moving stuff along the axes is very, very important, and it comes very, very, like, handy later on. So to do that, we're gonna, you can see the corresponding things. Green is Y. So if we want to move it on the green line here, we hit grab for G, and then we hit Y. And it's just like that. It snaps to the green line. So that's really, really easy, and we're going to be using this a lot, okay? The axes is very, very important, especially in modeling, especially in animating. Let's say now we want to go on the red line. Of course, you know red line is X. So we move that on the red line there. Pretty cool. Now, there is a blue line that you can see up here, the Z, which we can't see right now, but I'm going to reveal how to show it here in a second. But yes, you can hit Z, and now it's going up and down, above and below the grid here. You see the little imaginary floor, the grid? So you can move it up and down, okay? So now, you're probably wondering, oh yeah, I see this blue line here. Where's it at in the scene? How do I show that if I want to be seeing this at all times? I can see all the lines. I can know which way is up and down. Well, let me go ahead and show you guys. If you look up here And just above this, to the top left, you see these two little circles where it's like two little circles intertwining with each other. You hit the drop down menu. This is your overlays tab, okay? So you hit the drop down menu, and then now we can see the axes. By default, X and Y is enabled, but Z is not, okay? So we can actually hit the Z, and now we can see that imaginary blue line that we couldn't see before. So now if you want to keep that on, just so you know which way is up, which way is down, you know, which way you're moving stuff on, the X and the Y and the Z and all that, you know, we're going to keep it on for the demonstration purposes. But yeah, you can actually come up there, you can actually enable stuff, disable stuff, you can even turn off the floor if you want. You can do a lot of stuff in here, okay? And we're going to actually cover this in future stuff as well. So the overlays tab is actually very important when it comes to that, okay? So we're starting to move around, we're starting to get kind of familiar. So let's go ahead and talk about orientation and viewpoints, okay? So what does that mean? What is this like orientation and viewpoint stuff? So this basically talks about, like, you know, we have a 3D space, right? We can look around in 3 dimensions. Well, you can actually look at this in 2D, and it actually comes very, very handy. So to do this, on your numpad on your keyboard on the right side, you can actually hit 1, and you can actually, you know, look at this cube in 2 dimensions, okay? So we're actually looking at it from the side. So if you look up here, you can see how we have the red line, which is the X, and the up and down, but we're actually looking at it as if there was like no green line, the yellow line. We're looking straight at this cube on the side. Same thing if you hit 3. If you hit 3, now we can see the green line and the blue line, and we're looking at it from the X's perspective. The other side, the left, right, depending on which way you want it, which way you want front to be, okay? So we're looking at it as if it was like this or like this, okay? Now to look straight down, you hit the 7 on the numpad, and now we're looking at it straight down. And basically to reverse this, you hit control and then the number, so you can actually look at it from top down or from bottom up, you know? So really, however you want to look at it. Same thing with 1 and control 1, or 3 and control 3. You can even hit 5 on the keyboard, and then it will actually make it into an orthographic view, which looks really, really trippy. But this does come in handy when you actually want to get into fine detail stuff. If you want to get really, really close to stuff, because sometimes in Blender, if I try to get really, really close into detail, it'll sometimes, depending on how close you are to stuff, it'll actually disappear, okay? So if you want to get those fine details, little bitty things, using 5 on your numpad will help with that, and actually looking at it in orthographic view, okay? So why is that important? Why do we need to look down and all this other stuff? Well, to use the modeling for this, we're actually going to be making a crate, a box crate, okay? We're gonna actually bring in a reference image onto the screen so that we can see the image as we're building it, okay? So I'm gonna show you guys and why that's important, because a lot of people, you know, you may have like a separate screen you can look at for your images and stuff, but a lot of people like me, excuse my scratchy voice, I like to look at the image right there inside of Blender. So let me go ahead and show you guys how to add reference images into the scene, okay? So this is where the 7 looking down key comes in handy, okay? Because I like to look at it flat, okay? So we're gonna hit the 7 on the keyboard on the numpad, and then we're gonna add in a reference image, okay? So it doesn't matter where, just as long as you have like the little target here, this is where it's gonna spawn. So how do we add in a reference image? So we hit Shift A again, but instead of mesh, we're gonna come down here to image, okay? We got reference and background. In this case, we wanna use a reference for reference image, and of course you don't see nothing on screen right now because it's prompting me to pick an image for my PC, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull up that image there. Alrighty, there we go. Now I have the image on screen, so this is where you pull whatever image that you want to use as a reference onto the screen, okay? So we can see it right here. This is kind of the box that we're going to be making for this series, and yes, it's actually in the scene, like even though it's like down here below, I mean, it doesn't really matter because it's just a reference image, but yes, you can move this up and down wherever you prefer. So the other question is, let's say I want to have this out of the way, but how am I going to look at this image and also model at the same time? It's kind of awkward that it's two different things. I don't want to bounce back and forth. So this is where adding multiple windows comes in handy. Okay, so how do we add multiple windows inside of Blender? Now, if you follow my cursor all the way up to the corner up here, you see where it turns into like a crosshair? You want to click and drag And now you have 2 windows. Oh my goodness. Wait, let's add 3. Holy crap, you can add them all. And yes, they are all different things. If I take a thing here and move them, it is all different perspectives that you can do all live. This is what I love about Blender. Now, how do we get rid of these? Like say, oh man, I didn't mean to add this extra screen here. You want to come back to where it has the crosshair and just pull up, okay? Oops. You want to kind of go past it a little bit and pull up. See, like, so if I show you, like right here where it's got the crosshair, and I want to make this collapse into here, I want to go just past it and then pull up. And then now it's going to prompt me which way do I want to collapse, okay? So we want to collapse it up like that. That's how you simply get rid of the images. Now we have these little toolbars on the side. I personally like to take them away. I mean, you can use them too. They are tools that you can use. To get rid of them, you just hit T. And here you go. Now we have 2 windows. I'm going to come over to this guy. I'm going to focus in on him, and I'm going to hit 7. And now I can have 2 different perspectives. I have our modeling scene, and we have our image right here. So we can use to look at as we are building. Isn't that cool? And yes, you can move it around however you prefer. If you want to make it smaller and have multiple windows, you can do that as well and have this more of the primary window. Yes, you can actually do that. It's really cool. I love how Blender uses its like resources like this where it's like constantly you can make your own flow, right? Every time I'm doing building stuff, depending on what it is, like you can see the tabs at the top. Like you see how we're in layout right now. There's modeling, there's sculpting. Oh my goodness, it's gonna take forever. There's UV editing, which we are going to be going over. There's texture paint, there's shading, like all of these different things that you probably did not know is here inside of Blender, right? There's a lot of stuff you can do. I usually stick with the default layout, but depending on, now this is this is a preference thing, okay? Depending on what you're doing, you can use those tabs at the top. Oh, I can't talk. The tabs at the top to use as hotkeys, right? So like say like, you know, this is like, we want this to be our, you know, well, usually I make this as my modeling tab, and this is the one that I use to like view things. But yes, we can model in this one, and then we can come over here and be like, oh, now we got a full screen perspective. How does this look? You know, I can get zoomed in, I can have it full screen, and yes, you can full screen stuff by hitting Control Spacebar. Fun fact. So if you wanted, if you didn't want all this stuff over here, you just want to like, you know, focus on modeling, you can hit Control Spacebar, and to undo it, you can hit Control Spacebar again, okay? So you can do that, and then you come back over here and use it to model again, however you please. That's what I love about these tabs at the top up here, is it's all preference-based, your flow, you make it your workspace, okay? So that's what I love about Blender. So pretty cool stuff, right? So we actually kind of covered a little bit on how to get ready and get prepared for Blender here. Now, the next video, we are going to kind of discover how to do modeling, okay? So we're going to go over modeling, and then we're going to go over, like, sizing and all that good stuff. So you don't want to miss that kind of stuff. Leave a like and comment if you guys really, really enjoyed it, and subscribe if you are new here. I would love to know from you guys what new stuff that we have here. So when I do the next video, it's going to pop up there in the top right. We'd love to see you guys over there in that video. My name is Mr. Smiley. We'll see you guys in the next one. We'll see ya. Bye.